Greetings and salutations, and we've already got Scuff going first thing. Joy of joys. Okay, so yeah, that was not supposed to be showing just yet, but oh boy, we're gonna be in for a treat tonight, everyone. I've decided to go and do my very first, our very first tier list stream. I'm doing this because we actually are going to be having a tier list later on in the year, around August time. A good friend of mine and I are going to be doing a tier list of old games that we used to play back in the yonder olden days. For for the record, that particular tier list is going to be of games basically from the N64 and back. So, for those of you that do not know, the N64 came out back in 1996. So, we're going to be looking at stuff from like maybe the early 2000s at the latest. So, a lot of this stuff is going to be like at minimum 20 years old, if not more so. But enough about that. We're going back even further for today. We are going to be going into one of the most iconic and well-known groups of characters to ever be conceived. That's right, we're going to be talking about Disney villains today. Now, let's see. I'm not going to be going over, just to set a few ground rules, I'm not going over like antagonists that were kind of like spread out throughout the movie that didn't really serve as an overarching villain to the storyline. I'm also not going to be going over villains that, for the most part, were not really that prominent as an antagonist, even though they are officially listed as the villain. The big one that kind of jumps out to me that falls into that category is Aunt Sarah from Lady and the Tramp. That's not a really much of a villain, even though she's listed as the official Disney villain for Lady and the Tramp. That doesn't really count. At least not in my opinion. Like, when I think of a villain, I think of those characters that represent the primary antagonistic force that goes against the protagonist. Now, again, for that reason, antagonists that are kind of like disjointed are not really the main focus of an antagonistic force, are not going to be discussed here. So that kind of leaves out Stromboli, Honest John, and Monstro from like Pinocchio, for example. That's also going to kind of leave out like stuff for like Chernobog from Fantasia. That's not really like a primary villain, like maybe for that skit, but he's not really the villain of the overarching story of Fantasia, which in and of itself doesn't really have a overarching storyline. So for the purposes of this list, I ended up going through the list of villains to see which ones kind of met my qualifications for what constitutes an actual villain. Now, this isn't going to include sidekicks or secondary antagonists. So, no Sheriff of Nottingham from Robin Hood, even though I feel like he's a much more intriguing antagonist than Prince John, who is on this list. Sadly, that also means that I'm going to be leaving out Tamatoa from Moana. Even though, again, he's a much more intriguing and interesting villain than Tekka, who is on this list. And for the most part, like, even though you don't see Tekka until like the end of the movie, like for the final conflict, Tekka is still the overarching antagonist of the story and the one driving Moana's journey. So, by my qualifications, Tekka technically does qualify as a Disney villain. Now, that being said, let's go into the ranking. What's the word I'm looking for? The stratum. We have 5 ranks, and I'm going to be looking at a multitude of things for what each of these villains represents, how I feel they fit into the story, how they work as a foil to the protagonist of the story, and they are going to be set into one of 5 ranks. I will go ahead and introduce those here. Now, here at the bottom, we have what I like to call the fiendish fools. These are your bottom feeders. These are your bottom of the rung villains that make you go, I mean, is this really supposed to be a villain? Like, what kind of villainy is this? Like, these are the ones who are basically like trash. And then you have They Tried, which is like a bare bones step above the fiendish fools. And if you're wondering why I called the bottom rung this, it's because a running gag in Disney, and one that I love so much, is that if you want to be a Disney villain, all you have to do is call everybody a fool. Like Jafar, Ursula, let's see who, Maleficent, Ratcliffe, like all of these villains are like well known for using the word fool in order to insult their opponents. And I love it. So the most foolish of the fools falls down here at the bottom rung. And right above them are the They Trieds, where like you can see the beginnings of a villainous like arc. And you can see that they actually did make an attempt to make this a legitimate villain, but they are missing some very significant things that kind of, make them a true villain. Now, let's see. Now, granted, for the most part, I haven't really gone over, I haven't gone through and done this ranking yet myself. We're going to be doing it as we go. The only qualifier for this list is that I am restricting the number of villains that are going to be listed at the top. So this tier right here, this Baddest Bones tier, there's not going to be that many. I'm restricting it to 15% of the 38 villains currently on this list. So with that being said, rounded up, that means only 6 of these Mamma Jammas are going to be up here. And to be considered one of the baddest bones, we'll go into that in a little bit. But you'll kind of see where I'm getting at when we go into what the requirements are for this tier. Now, after the They Trieds, you have the awfully average. These are the ones that are kind of so-so. There's not much else I can say about them. They have a good backstory, but they also have some very significant flaws that keep them from going any higher. Like I said, they're average. They're not too bad, but at the same time, they're not too good. And then after that, you have the deliciously diabolical. These are the ones that are good. Like, these are good, solid villains. These are the ones that are, like, they've got really good all around standing as far as, like, their motives, how they interact with the other characters, and whatnot. They just don't have what it takes to reach that final spot. And then you have the baddest bones. Those are going to be our top 6. And if I'm able to, like, I am going to put these, like, in order from, like if it lets me put them in a specific, like, placement, like if I can move them around the placement up here, I am going to rank them like my top 6 villains. But as far as the criteria, as far as the things that we are looking for, as I've mentioned, we are going to be looking at stuff like motive. Is their motive, like, integral to the story? Is it something that is very realistic? Is it something that is actually, like, a good driving force for them to be as bad as they are? Next, we're going to be looking at interactions with the characters. In particular, their subordinates, if they have any, and the protagonist. This is going to be a biggie because the best villains are those who have not only, like, a substantial relationship that's fleshed out over the course of their movie with their subordinates or their allies, as well as a good, solid antagonistic relationship with the protag. And, like, they get bonus points if there is an actual character arc that sees them change over the course of the movie. In which case, there are very few of the ones listed here that actually can fall under that particular category and get those bonus points. In fact, looking at this list, I honestly can only see 2 characters that would qualify for those bonus points, where they actually have a legitimate character arc. And that says something. Like, for me to offer bonus points for something like that, like, this kind of comes back to my background as a writer. Like, I love stories, and I love being able to see not just the protagonist, like, grow and evolve, but seeing the villain do so as well, because it kind of shows that not just the hero can change. So in a way, like, having a villain that goes through a character arc is the sign of good writing, even if their movie did not do as well financially or at the box office as it could have been. Now, let's see. Villain songs. If they have a villain song, that is going to kind of play into the ranking a little bit, because there are some villain songs that are so-so, but then there are those that are absolute bangers, and I will listen to them all day long. In fact, several of the songs from these villains I have on my own particular playlist. Although, admittedly, not all of them have villain songs. That's actually something you saw a lot more of in, say, like, the Renaissance era. So, like, the 90s and early 2000s is when you saw the majority of your villain songs, with a few exceptions on this list. One of the ones that kind of sticks out to me is Dr. Facilier from Princess and the Frog. He's a more recent addition, but he has an absolute banger of a villain song, and that shows. Now, let's see. Again, I kind of went back to the motives, their interactions with their allies, the story arc, villain song, like just not only that, but also like their actions during the movie. That is like going to be a big one. Are they acting particularly villainous? What actions do they take during the movie? Is it something that's kind of realistic from a villain standpoint? And so on. That being said, let's go ahead and kind of get down into it. So we're going to go ahead and start by going basically down the list from the top row all the way to the right. These are in relative alphabetical order for the most part. And then we're going to kind of go over to the end here. So our first villain is Alameda Slim from Home on the Range. I'm not going to lie, like, I honestly couldn't finish this movie the whole way through because it was kind of bad. But as odd as it sounds, Slim is one of the few highlights of the movie. Slim is actually a very good point in this otherwise horrendous animated movie, which is, like, by Disney standards, this thing is atrocious. But Slim is a bright spot and one of the few in that movie because he has a legitimate motive. He's a cattle rustler, he steals cattle. You can't get much more basic than that. He also has a relatively decent villain song, but at the same time, though, it's also kind of ridiculous, which I feel like gives it a couple extra points from me just because of how off the walls nuts it is. The dude yodels for like half of his villain song. Who yodels in a villain song? Alameda Slim, that's who. That's who freaking yodels in the middle of a villain song. He interacts like the typical villain way with the guys that kind of like serve under him. He kind of like verbally abuses them, whacks them around a little bit. And he's not really, as far as like his interactions with the protagonists, the three lady cows, he's not really aware of their sentience. And like the biggest bright spot of his interactions with them is the fact that one of the cows is immune to his yodeling because she is completely tone deaf. Which I feel like is, one, hilarious, and two, the most redonkulous thing I've ever seen as a way of overpowering a villain. So Slim, I feel like, kind of gets the awfully average just because he's a bright spot in an otherwise horrible movie. Next, we have Amos Slade from Fox and the Hound. Now, he has a decent motive, not gonna lie. I mean, he sees a fox running around his yard, he automatically assumes it's after his chickens. He's a hunter by trade, I do not fault him for this. This is actually a realistic motive and one of the brighter spots in his rank. That being said, otherwise, he doesn't really do much. I feel like he goes a little bit too hard on trying to kill Todd. Especially by the end where he kind of like turns himself into a poacher at the end. And the surprising thing is that he and Copper and Todd and Vixie all get involved in like a bear attack. Surprisingly, none of them die, but again, this is a Disney movie. The only one that ends up dying is the bear. But that being said, Amos does get a few extra points because he is one of the two characters that does undergo a character arc. Because by the end of the bear fight and by the end of the chase scene, he is kind of come to terms with his dog Copper's friendship, albeit tentative friendship now, with Todd. So he kind of like learns to just let it go and gives up and kind of just goes home. I am kind of surprised though that the only thing he got out of that whole interaction, other than a sense of this ain't worth it, is a broken leg. But like, honestly, the character arc and the fact that he has a legitimate reason for being an antagonist to Todd puts him in the they tried category. Like, that kind of bumps him up from Fiendish Fools, because other than the Hunter line, like, he is not really much of a villain. He's just a regular dude. But at the same time, I can see that they actually try to make a realistic and on and down to earth antagonist that had a legitimate reason for acting the way he does. So he does get a they tried. Bellwether. Dawn Bellwether from Zootopia. One of, if I may say, the worst twist villains to ever come about from Disney. Like, Bellwether is basically the result of Disney's desire to kind of introduce the twist villain that kind of took off with Frozen, and it did not get very much better. Now, twist villains can work. There are a few twist villains on here that actually legitimately work. Honestly, though, I feel like Pixar and DreamWorks do their twist villains just a bit better than Disney does. And Bellwether is ample proof of that. For the majority of the movie, she doesn't really, like, do much. Like, she does help out the main characters. She does help out Judy and Nick at some point. But other than that, like, you don't even realize her motive until the very end of the movie. And the reasoning for it is kind of bleh. It's like she wants to incite a race war between the carnivores and the herbivores, and she's willing to, like, do whatever it takes to get her way on that. And, like, Zootopia is an awesome movie. It's just Bellwether is one of the softer points of the movie, to be perfectly honest. She doesn't have a good motive. The brightest spot on Bellwether's resume is the fact that she is good at hiding that she's a twist villain for the most part until the very end. That I was actually surprised seeing her as a twist villain, but her motives and her way of going about it was kind of what killed any, like, ability of her to kind of bring it home, as it were. If they had nailed that, she would probably be a hard sell between average and diabolical if she had managed to have a better motive and just a better way of going about doing it. Mochi, leave my microphone alone. That being said, I have to kind of put Bellwether in the they tried. Again, her interactions with the protagonist are the only thing that save her from being named a fool. Like, I can see the potential there. They just didn't make it work. And that's sad. Because in a movie as great as Zootopia, like, it would have been one of the all-time greats, in my opinion, if they had nailed the Bellwether thing. And then we have a bowling hat guy from Meet the Robinsons is our next one. And I'm sorry, but I just could not get into this guy as a villain. And I'm going with him over the, like, true antagonist of Meet the Robinsons, the Hat. Because for the most part, you don't ever see the Hat. The Hat is a worse twist villain than Bellwether was, and that's saying something. And, like, this is the dude that you see for the majority of the movie. Bowling Hat Guy is basically, like, the one that you recognize when it comes to the villain from Meet the Robinsons. Unfortunately, they did not do very good with him. And Mochi, leave that microphone alone. I am going to put you down now. Bad kitty. Bad kitty. Okay, but yeah, back to this dude. Like, he doesn't work as a villain. Like, his motives are kind of bleh. Like, he wants to get back at the main character. Like, it's been so long. Like, I actually, like, had to do a little bit of research, and even then, like, Meet the Robinsons, for me, is an otherwise forgettable Disney movie, and I feel like part of that is because it is a time travel movie. I can name on one hand, with fingers left over, the number of series or, like, entertainment, like, content that has to do with, like, time travel that actually manages to grip me in a way that I actually want to continue the story. Meet the Robinsons does not count. It does not meet that bar. And with the abundance of, like, time travel stories and whatnot out there, like, for me to get involved with it, like, it has to be good. They have to make it realistic. They have to make it compelling. And Meet the Robinsons just does not do it for me, honestly. And that being said, like, this guy is a wimp. He doesn't do much for the entirety of the movie that he's in as an antagonist. So we have our first fiendish fool in Bowling Hat Guy. And then next we have Callahan from Big Hero 6. Big Hero 6 suffers from a lot of the same issues that Zootopia does. Really smasher of a movie. They didn't nail the villain quite as well as I had hoped. I mean, I can see it. I can see the potential. Callahan is a better twist villain than Bellwether, but it's still not the best. Callahan is kind of just a meh twist villain. I do like his motive, though. His motive is realistic, it's compelling, it kind of gets you, and it makes you sympathize with him to a certain degree. That being said, the fact that he came off, like, he was introduced as this congenial, kind of like grandfatherly type middle-aged dude, and then he turned around and was willing to sacrifice Hiro's older brother Tadashi for the sake of getting a hold of the microbots. Like, that just kind of, like, threw me for a bit. But other than that, his interaction with the Big Hero 6 group is very intriguing. The fight scenes are some of the best in Disney, in my opinion. I feel like they really went hard with the fight scenes in this movie. And the final conflict was actually, like, very well done. Like, the final battle with Callahan was done very well. But the twist villain stuff and, like, his, like, actions with Tadashi and whatnot, that kind of drag him down, because otherwise he would be in the diabolical section. But unfortunately, I do kind of have to put him in awfully average. And now we start getting to the meat and potatoes, the real good ones. Captain James Hook from Peter Pan. So let's see. What do I have to say about Captain Hook? He basically takes command of every scene that he's in. He doesn't have a true villain song, but you hear a lot of, like, the pirate shanties and whatnot with his crew being involved and just like his interactions with not only Peter Pan and but also his crew. Like for the most part, he treats his crew like garbage. Like he straight up shoots one and throws another one overboard by the end of the movie. The only one that he actually has a legitimate positive relationship is Smee. And I feel like Smee acts as a very good voice of reason to Captain Hook that kind of helps him rein in his more psychotic episodes. But Hook has a legitimate motive for being a villain. I mean, for one, he's a fucking pirate. Like, you're a pirate, dude. You're obviously gonna be a bad dude. But at the same time, he has a legit reason because Peter Pan cut off his hand and fed it to a crocodile that now follows him everywhere. I would be pretty brassed off if somebody cut my hand off and fed it to a crocodile. So he has a legit motive. He has good interactions with his like main ally in Smee, even though he treats the rest of the crew like trash and expendable tools. But his interactions with Peter Pan in particular are very interesting. He's very intelligent. He's manipulative. He checks all the boxes of being a solid villain. I just don't think I can put him in the baddest bones, but he is like right there on the cusp. I have to put him in deliciously diabolical, but he is our first diabolical of the entire list. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Like, if you haven't seen Peter Pan for a while, I recommend you go back and watch it and kind of just see like how they interact. So next we're gonna go with Clayton. Clayton from Tarzan. Oh boy, what do I have to say about Clayton? He is good. He is a very solid villain. His interactions and the way that they characterize him are very well done. He actually serves as a kind of foil to Tarzan in that they both represent differing versions of masculinity. And that kind of really sets the bar. Because whereas Tarzan has this kind of quiet, gentle strength, Clayton is a bit more bombastic. He's more aggressive, kind of gung-ho, wants to like prove his dominance over the jungles. Whereas Tarzan kind of just gets things done. Also, Clayton has one of the like sickest death scenes in all of Disney. So, like, I feel like that kind of gives him some bonus points, plus the fact that he is a legitimate threat. And he kind of like delves deeper into anger and fury the further he goes into the story. So like he's solid. He's just not enough to be considered a bad bone. So I would put him as a lower rank, as a lower tiered, deliciously diabolical. So he's good. He's a solid villain. He just doesn't have what it takes to get to that top tier. Which I am kind of like going over these faces and trying to devise in my mind who those top 6 are going to be. So let's see. I got 1, 2. Yep, I think I've actually got my 6 kind of selected already. So let's kind of go forward and we'll go with Cruella de Vil from 101 Dalmatians. Motive, she has a motive, but it's a bit psychotic. She wants to murder puppies for a fur coat, Who does that? Like, that in and of itself is enough to put you above average. Her interactions with the other characters are a plus, but they're not great. She comes off as kind of like your stereotypical villain fare. She's bombastic. Is she treats her henchmen horrendously. Like, Jasper and Horace are two of my favorite Disney sidekicks and some of my favorite like antagonistic characters in all of Disney outside of the major villains. It's just they take so much abuse from this woman and they still just keep on trucking. Like, honestly, I feel like Jasper and Horace are a more interesting like pair of antagonists compared to Cruella. But at the same time though, she does have a legit history with some of the protagonists. She is old schoolmates with Anita, and that kind of puts her at odds with Anita's husband Roger, who can kind of see through her already. So, like, there's no twist here, there's no, like, arc development. But at the same time, though, she has a horrendous motive, and the way she kind of devolves into a psychotic wacko at the end, she proves that she's still a very intelligent and sneaky villainess. She knows how to get what she wants, and she's not afraid to step on toes to do it. So for that, I do kind of have to put her in the deliciously diabolical. Wow, 40 minutes in and we're already, see, 8 villains in. We still got 30 more to go. Oh boy, we gotta move. Okay, so next we have Edgar Baltazar from the Aristocats. I mean, Edgar's got a legitimate motive. Like, he wants that rich heiress money. But at the same time, the way he goes about doing it is kind of just bass-ackwards and stupid. It's like, dude, they're cats. I love how he's like trying to, during the scene in the movie where he finds out that the cats are inheriting first, he's trying to calculate how long they're going to live through their 9 lives. I'm like, dude, they don't actually have 9 lives. What is wrong with you? But he does prove to be a rather sneaky and manipulative character. His interactions with both Madame and the animals are very entertaining. They're interesting. Like, Edgar kind of showcases his most... Edgar is almost Slytherin in a way, if you had to put him in a Harry Potter house, and how sneaky he is in trying to, like, finagle his way to the top and to get that inheritance. So, like, he's not good enough to be considered diabolical, but he is average. He's still got potential. He's got the makings of a good villain. He just has a few flaws. Like the logic in thinking that a cat has actually 9 lives and then trying to calculate how long they're going to live. I still can't get over that. That's so stupid. Okay, let's move on before I actually lose my lunch. Okay. Next we have the evil queen from Snow White, the OG, the original bad Mama Jamma. She has some good points, but she also has some points where they really did not think things through all that much, unfortunately. And it shows. Like, for a movie made in the 30s, it's still a very good story, but now looking back on it, you kind of wonder, like, why would she go to all that trouble of wanting to be the fairest in the land and outdo Snow White? Why does she have to go to all that trouble just to try and kill Snow White? If she could make a potion to make herself a hideous hag, Why couldn't she just do the opposite and make a potion to make her more beautiful? I feel like that would be less work involved. So yeah, like she kind of loses points for logic and for the whole gloating thing at the end where she's like, "I'll crush your bones," and then just sits there laughing until the lightning strike sends her to her doom. Like you can see, like she does have a very villainous attitude. She's just a out and out biatch. But at the same time, she just doesn't have the points to put her above anything other than average, in my opinion. Okay, so I can actually move these around. All right, so I'm gonna try to like put the villains in order from like how I would rank them from best to worst, going to the right. Next, Dr. Facilier from Princess and the Frog. This is where we start getting into the good stuff. Like, this is actually our first villain that I can honestly say belongs in this top tier. Like, Facilier is one of my favorite Disney villains. I love the fact that he has an interesting backstory. He's a voodoo witch doctor. You don't see a lot of stuff like that in any animated movie, so they get bonus points for that. The way he interacts with the characters is top notch. He's sneaky, he's manipulative, he does whatever it takes to get his way. Like, he has one of the best villain songs in all of Disney. Friends on the Other Side is an absolute banger. It's a fire song. No lie. And like his interactions with Naveen and Tiana are very well done. The way he sends out his like shadow henchmen to try and find them is very well done. I love the fact that he's not even like the one in charge. He has a debt to his friends on the other side that he is desperately trying to pay back. And you can see the desperation in his eyes and in his voice at the end when they are dragging him to voodoo heck. He has a decent reason for wanting to, for being the way he is. He wants to kind of rule New Orleans and pay back his debt to the voodoo demons by providing them with the souls of everyone in New Orleans. So he has the motive. He has the personality. He's got the song. He's just an overall solid plus tier villain. And that's kind of why I put him up here in the baddest bones. Next, Claude Frollo from Hunchback of Notre Dame. We have another one who is on the level of Cruella de Vil in terms of just his actions make him worse than he would otherwise be. And one of the things that puts Frollo above Cruella, though, is the realism in him. Frollo is, when you look and think about the time period that this movie takes place, back in old-time France, Frollo is a pure, realistic caricature of how people in religious positions of power acted. He likes to think of himself as virtuous, even though his actions are clearly opposite to that. He tries to put himself up as a righteous man. He tries to basically like make himself seem better in the eyes of the common person, when in reality he is just a racist, bigoted, horrible person. And his interactions with Quasimodo, with Esmeralda, with Phoebus show that he is like the full package. He has got the manipulation. He has got the guilt tripping. He's got the like hypocrisy. He has the abuse of power. He's got it all. Like, Frollo is one of the biggest bright spots of Hunchback of Notre Dame, which I consider one of the top Disney movies from the Renaissance era, surprisingly enough. Like, a lot of people give Hunchback of Notre Dame crap, but Frollo is a bright spot in this movie, along with the fact that his villain song, Hellfire, is, like Friends on the Other Side, a banger. Like, it's one of the best. It's, like, most people would widely consider it one of the top 3 villain songs of the Disney pantheon. So for that reason, Frollo is our second baddest of the bones. Next, Captain Gontu from Lilo and Stitch. There's not much to say about Gant. He doesn't really go through a character arc, but he kind of becomes neutralized by the end of the movie. He doesn't really have like a great motive, but at the same time, it's realistic. The man is following orders from the alien council, excuse me, to kind of do what they want and getting Stitch over to the, I guess, exile planet where he's supposed to be spending the rest of his days. He doesn't really interact with the other characters too much until the end of the movie, but his early interactions with Jumba are actually very entertaining. In fact, like, Lilo and Stitch is one of my favorite movies, if only because of the trial scene at the beginning where they introduce Stitch and he says something offensive in alien gibberish and Jumba's like, I didn't teach him that. I'm just like, that is like every parent that has ever had a child and heard them say a curse word. Like, that's the automatic response. Like, I didn't teach him that. And for that reason alone, like, Lilo and Stitch is one of my favorite Disney movies. That being said, Gontu is not the best of villains. There's potential there, but at the same time, they didn't do enough with it. So he gets a they tried. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't get a picture of Gaston that would show his face, but next we have Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. Overall, very solid villain. He has good motive. He wants the girl, even though the girl obviously does not want him. He's willing to do what it takes to get her. Although the craziest thing and the thing that kind of gives Gaston extra points besides having a solid Disney villain song, not the best, but still not horrible. But the thing that gives Gaston extra points is how realistic of a character he is. Gaston is basically like a caricature of bullies from, like, that you knew from your childhood and from your young adulthood. Gaston kind of represents the worst of what society expects from men. And the fact that he's basically, the way he acts and stuff is so realistic to the point that you could see bits of Gaston in people you interact with on a daily basis. Like, you can see it in other people. And that's the scariest thing about this guy. So for that, we gotta put Gaston in the deliciously diabolical. Like, I would put him below Hook, but under Cruella. Or like, he's under Hook, but over Cruella, I'm sorry. Alright, so next we have Mother Gothel from Tangled. Again, solid villain, pretty decent villain song overall, although I can think of a few songs in Tangled that are way better than Mother Knows Best. That being said, she is very manipulative, she has a good motive, she wants to live forever. The way that they portray her in Tangled gets her extra points because when you notice, whenever Gothel is like loving to Rapunzel, all of her attention is focused on Rapunzel's hair instead of Rapunzel herself. Now, when you compare that to Flynn, who focuses on Rapunzel's face and eyes as opposed to her hair, it's a marked difference. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and watch the movie again. That being said, Gothel is also a very solid Disney villain that gets a deliciously diabolical. And at the same time, I would put her between Gaston and Cruella. Now, Hades. Oh my god, Hades is probably... I would say he is my second favorite Disney villain from the Renaissance era. And for that, like, you probably can already guess where he's going to go by that point alone. But James Wood was the perfect casting for this character. He took the role and he ran with it, and he expressed Hades so well. Hades has a very good motive. His brother made him Lord of the Underworld, which is like the worst job anyone could ever have. And he basically like foisted it on him. So like, of the Greek gods, like Hades is kind of like the redheaded stepchild, pun intended completely because of the fire hair. Like his interactions with both Pain and Panic and the heroes are like some of the best parts of the movie. Like the way his emotions just shift from one extreme to the other is so well portrayed and kind of represents like what you would expect a god of a god of death essentially to act like. Like the way that they did this character justice was amazing. He doesn't really have a villain song per se, but Hercules has some of the best music in the Renaissance era and is overall a very good film. So I have to put Hades as one of the baddest bones. And I would probably put him just above Facilier. Like, they're almost neck and neck. Okay, Hans. Oh my god, Hans from Frozen. One of the most annoying Disney villains out there. And, like, I'm just gonna be straight up. He's going into the They Tried. He's the poster child for Disney twist villains, and they did not nail it. Like, I can see where they were going for with it, but his motive is shoddy. Like, I can see him wanting to be king, but the fact that he tried to off both of the princesses of Arendelle to try and become a king was far-fetched. Like, why would he think that they would make him king if he killed the legitimate heirs to the throne, even if he portrayed it like he was protecting the people from them? Like, they would probably have another heir in line, or at the very least, they would have a line of succession going back. So, Hans just doesn't do it for me as a villain. Like, some of his interactions are very interesting, I'll say, but they weren't perfectly well done. He gets points for manipulation, but that's about it. Other than that, he's just a ho-hum villain that tried to make something of himself and just floundered horrendously. Next, we have the Horned King from the Black Cauldron. I don't have much to say about this guy. We find him interacting with the main character and the hero less than half an hour into the movie. He then proceeds to let the hero escape somehow, even though he has the hero in his grasp along with the movie's MacGuffin, which, by the way, they don't make use of very much beyond that first 15-20 minute stretch of the movie at the start. That being said, the Horned King is definitely evil looking. He does get points for that, but at the same time though, he doesn't do much. He just doesn't do a lot. And so I gotta kind of put him with Fiendish Fools because he's a fool. He let the hero go. How did he let the hero escape 20 minutes into the movie? What the heck, man? Learn how to be a better villain. Ay, ay, ay. Okay. Jafar from Aladdin. One of the more solid villains on this list. He doesn't really have a real villain song in the first movie, but he does get a good one in Return of Jafar. Which, while all in all a bad movie, his villain song was one of the few highlights of it, in my opinion, along with Iago's character arc. But Jafar is a very solid villain. He has good motive. He wants to be the Sultan. And, like, my hot take, like, Jafar was an unsung hero of that movie because he clearly wanted to become Sultan because the current Sultan is a bit of a buffoon. And if you think I'm joking, look at how the Sultan interacts. Like, he's basically a trope of the lovable, kindly, older gentleman. But all he does is, like, play with toys all day instead of actually, I don't know, running a country. But that being said, Jafar is very manipulative. He's sly. Like, he's even more of a Slytherin than Edgar is. Like, Edgar can take some Slytherin sneakiness lessons from Jafar because Jafar has got it going. His interactions with Aladdin are very good from the time he sneaks him into the Cave of Wonders to the final conflict. His interactions with Jasmine and the Sultan are very well done. So Jafar gets a deliciously diabolical. I would put him, honestly, like about the same as Captain Hook. They're like neck and neck. I just like Hook a bit more because I love the way he commands every scene that he's in, regardless of what it is. Jafar doesn't do that. The only times he really takes command of the scene is when Iago is actually interacting as well. And honestly, I feel like Iago is a more entertaining character. Which, if your sidekick is more entertaining than you are, you kind of lose points for that. Next, King Candy from Wreck-It Ralph. I'm not gonna lie, King Candy is an example of a twist villain done right. He is one of the few twist villains from Disney that actually works. One of two, I would say. Maybe three if you consider one of our later participants a twist villain. And of course, you would only consider them a twist villain if you've never read modern or classic literature. And if, just from that point, you might have an idea of who I'm talking about. But King Candy is very well done. His interactions with the other characters are very well thought out. They're very well choreographed. If you'll notice his interactions with Ralph, when like there are scenes where you can see his hands kind of like curling in on themselves, like he's being nervous or defensive. So like his nervousness like can be seen if you know what to look for. Disney did a very good job at animating King Candy and kind of like bringing his character to life. He has a legitimate reason, even if it is kind of silly. But at the same time, though, like he isn't the perfect villain. He does kind of like lose control, and the whole like powering him up through getting eaten by a bug near the end was kind of just bull. That was complete Bolshevik, so to speak. So I would give King Candy a deliciously diabolical, put him just above Clayton, but under Cruella. Because he is a good, solid villain, he just is missing a few good points. And as you can see, I do have a lot of diabolicals that I actually enjoy. Now, next we have Lady Tremaine from Cinderella. She kind of falls in the same vein as the evil queen. She has an interesting motive. She kind of just wants to project her own daughters over her stepdaughter, and she's a nasty witch to do it. She mistreats Cinderella. Like, she's got the points there. It's just, other than that, she doesn't really do a whole lot to advance the story. Other than like herself, most of the story is advanced by her daughters more than anything. The only time where she really advances the story a lot is the scene where she interacts with Cinderella about offering to let her go to the ball and then locking her in the tower at the end. And then obviously like when she trips the Grand Duke. But other than that, she doesn't really do a whole lot. So I feel like Lady Tremaine gets a they tried. And I would put her, like, honestly, I would put her below Han. Well, actually, no. Han is still worse. Because at least Tremaine is actually bad. And acts bad and knows she's bad. Hans is just Hans. And then, let's see. Next, we have Madame Mim. She's not really an overarching antagonist, but she does provide the most amount of conflict in Sword in the Stone as a foil to Merlin. And I feel like she was done very well. She's got a very catchy villain song. The short time that she's on the screen, she does take very good command of the conflict and of the situation, going up against trying to kill Arthur and up to the fight with Merlin. And if we're going by early Disney films, the fight between Mim and Merlin is one of the best animated conflict / battles in early Disney animation. So for that, I have to put Mim in the average category. Probably above the Queen, but below Edgar, just because she's not around for much of the movie. At all. Like, if she was in the movie more and actually presented more of an overarching threat for the entirety of the movie, she would probably be at or near the top of this list for awfully average. But the lack of screen time kind of hurts her. Next, we have Maleficent. Oh boy, Maleficent. Like, she is a true total package. She is one of the most iconic villains of all time. Not just in Disney, but in just animation as a whole. She has a good motive. She was shunned and ignored by the king and queen and not invited to the royal christening. If you know anything about the history of the time period that this story takes place in, you will know that this is a horrific insult. A royal christening of a heir to the throne was not really a private event. It was basically like the social event of the season. So for someone to not get an invitation was an insult of the highest order. And to Maleficent, that would not stand. So she gave the king and queen an opportunity to invite her and was being honestly kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Lenient with them. But when they threw it in her face, that is when she decided to curse Aurora. And she does everything well. She takes command of every scene that she's in. She is bad to the bone. She knows it. She's evil for the sake of just being a witch. She has a good interaction with her like raven slash crow. I'm not sure what that is. I think it's a raven. And then, like, she doesn't interact with the princess much, but she does interact with Philip. And her interactions with the prince are actually some of the better parts of the movie. Whereas most of the rest of the early parts of the movie are just kind of dull. But Maleficent is the biggest high point. And for that, she does get a Baddest Bones ranking. And let's see. Yeah, I would probably put her above Hades and Facilier just a short bit. Alright, so next we have... The next two are actually kind of like together. So I'll actually do this one first. So first we're going to do Madame Medusa from The Rescuers. And she's okay. She's got a decent motive. She wants to have the Devil's Eye Diamond. Her methods of going about getting it are cruel and unusual. She kidnaps a child to send it down into a hole where the diamond is resting. That is just plain evil. And like her interactions with Snoops and the Gators are very entertaining. She acts like a very manipulative parent towards Penny. And I'm not gonna lie, like the ending battle scene against Medusa is one of the most entertaining from like the 70s and 80s era Disney movies, in my personal opinion. But there's not much else that she does. She doesn't take command of her scenes the way other characters do. She doesn't do much other than try to like get the diamond. Like all of her interactions are basically just her like screaming and hurling insults at Snoops. So the potential is there. There's just not a lot that they did with it. So I would put her probably above Gantu, but below Bellwether, just because, like, again, the potential is there. They just didn't do as much with it as I would have liked. Next, we have the villain of the second Rescuers movie, The Rescuers Down Under, Percival McLeach. Honestly, I think McLeach is a more engaging villain than Medusa was. He actually seems to have a knowledge of the sentiency of the animals to an extent, but he's also proven that he's very intelligent, cunning. Like, I would put him and Jafar on the same level in terms of like their sneakiness and manipulation abilities. Despite having a third grade education, McLeach is actually damn smart and very resourceful, I would say. But at the same time, though, he doesn't quite do as much as other villains do in their interactions. But at the same time, I would put him at the higher tier of the awfully average. Like, he's got good points, he just doesn't do as much with them as he should. So I would put him at awfully average, but he's right on the cusp of being a diabolical. Next, Prince John from Robin Hood. Robin Hood is one of my favorite Disney movies, despite the fact that it recycles a lot of old animation and voice actors, if you notice. But for the most part, John is... He basically just comes off as a stereotypical trope of the snooty royal that just has an abuse of power superiority complex. So I would put him under... They tried just above Hans and below Tremaine, because John just comes off as too much of a crybaby. Like, I feel like the Sheriff of Nottingham is a much better villain, And I feel like if they had centered the conflict around the sheriff instead of John, Robin Hood would have been a much better movie. Because the voice actor for the Sheriff of Nottingham did a really good job of bringing the character to life and expressing the way the sheriff interacted with Robin Hood. Whereas John just didn't do that. Like, he didn't command his scenes the way the sheriff did, especially in the fight against Friar Tuck. Like, that is one of my all-time favorite scenes from that movie. And John just didn't have the same level of scene or scenes with the characters. So that kind of just lost him a lot of points. Next, we have the Queen of Hearts from Alice in Wonderland. She kind of suffers the same issues as Madame Mim. Doesn't have near enough screen time. But at the same time, though, she also she proves herself a much more engaging and threatening villain for the amount of screen time that she's in. I would put the Queen at awfully average, around the same level as Madame Mim. Maybe just a little bit less, because the Queen is like a stereotype for anger issues. And literally, like, the vast majority of what she does is screaming her head off, and quite literally screaming off with the heads of anyone stupid enough to tick her off. Okay. Ratcliffe. Okay, Pocahontas is in and of itself not the best movie. Like, it's decent if you want a good, fun movie and don't mind the historical inaccuracies. Ratcliffe is not a highlight of this movie. He doesn't have engaging interactions or relationships with the men under his command, with John Smith, with the Indians. He's just kind of there to provide a reason for the Englishmen being on the soil of the New World. Other than that, he doesn't do much. That, and he pretty much fills the quota for, we need somebody to hurt one of the heroes so that they have to leave. Yeah, Ratcliffe was basically the sorry SOB that had to fill that role. But I would still put him above Bowling Hat Guy and the Horned King, because unlike the Horned King, he didn't capture the hero and then lose them in the first 20 minutes. And unlike Bowling Hat Guy, he actually does have a legitimate reason for wanting to do the things that he does, because he wants to find gold in Virginia so that he can improve his standing in court. That is a typical noble, reason for being a jackass, but at the same time, they could have expanded on that so much more and made him much more of an overarching and interesting villain. So unfortunately, Ratcliffe is probably going to be at the top of our fiendish fools category. Ratigan from The Great Mouse Detective. One of my all-time favorite Disney movies. I would say top 2. Easily. And with that, Ratigan is probably the biggest highlight of the film. Vincent Price was the perfect cast for this character. Vincent Price did an amazing job in bringing Ratigan to life in a way that no other voice actor at the time, I feel, could have done. Ratigan is to, Price is to Ratigan what James Wood was to Hades, but they did so much more. Ratigan is basically the animal version of Moriarty from Sherlock Holmes. And it shows in the way that he and Basil try to outwit each other. His interactions with his minions is very, very intricate when you actually look at it. He's very Uh, he's almost like a father to them, or a very deranged, crazy uncle. But at the same time, if they do something that goes against the grain or ticks him off, he does not hesitate to bring out the bell, as it were. And his interactions with Basil are some of the best parts of this movie, especially in the final fight scene. Like seeing him finally like lose his grip on his anger and lose his emotions going up against Basil and Big Ben is one of the best final battle sequences of all Disney. So for that, Ratigan is our current king of the baddest bones. So we have room for one more baddest of the bones. Who among these remaining characters will get the slot? Anyone that knows me probably already knows where I'm going to put that person, or who that lucky character is. Alright, so next we have Lyle Tiberius Rourke from Atlantis, an unsung gem of a Disney movie, and another example of a twist villain done right. Like, Rourke is like a total package. He's got a good reason for wanting to do the things he does. He is a mercenary. Money is what motivates him. He's a proven leader. His interactions with the crew over the course of the movie are some of the best sequences of the entire movie. The way he interacts with Milo, as he evolves from a kindly commander to a deranged and angry soldier that is trying to do whatever it takes to win the battle and win the war against Milo. Like, it's fun to watch him interact with the other characters. And he's very realistic in a way that other Disney villains are because of the way that they portrayed this movie. So honestly, I would put Rourke at Deliciously Diabolical at the top of the heap right now. Because like Hook, he commands every scene that he's in, just as he commands his crew. And he does everything just a smidge better than Hook. The only thing that Hook does better than Rourke, I feel, is Hook has a much more engaging relationship with Smee than Rourke does with his right hand Helga. And I feel like that's the one area where Hook kind of beats out Rourke. But Rourke beats him out at every other area, which puts him just over the top of that pile. Now we come to Scar. Scar is it pretty much is like the total Disney villain package in a nutshell. He's sly, he's very soft-spoken with everyone that he interacts with, just about. He has easily the best Disney villain song. Like, honestly, my top 3 villain songs are, in order, Be Prepared, Friends on the Other Side, and then Ratigan's The World's Greatest Criminal Mind. Like, those are my top 3 villain songs. And Jeremy Irons, like Price and Wood, was a perfect cast for the villain of this movie. Scar is like the quintessential Disney villain and what a lot of people think of when they think Disney villain. So Scar is our final baddest of the bones, and he takes the top spot just above Ratigan. Because everything that Ratigan does, Scar does just a smidge better. The only thing that Ratigan beats out Scar in, similar to how Hook beats out Rourke, is that Ratigan has a much more engaging and entertaining relationship with his protagonist. Whereas Scar with Simba is kind of just the sleazy uncle that was the true murderer of Simba's father. Like that is kind of like this movie was plucked essentially from Hamlet. Is basically what The Lion King is. But the way the hero and villain interact in The Lion King was just it was good. It just wasn't as good as The Great Mouse Detective. But Scar beats out Ratigan just about everywhere else. So that puts us at our full ranking of the baddest bones. Next, we have Shan Yu from Mulan. There's a lot to like about Shan Yu, but at the same time, he doesn't do as much as he should. He doesn't really command his scenes until near the end of the movie. Up to that point, he's more so just like an overarching shadow that kind of drives the conflict of the movie. So he's good, he's just not very good. And he's not a twist villain like Callahan is, so I would put him like just under McLeach for awfully average. And then next we have Shere Khan from The Jungle Book. Again, we have a villain that fills in a few good slots in the criteria. He just doesn't do as much as he should. Also, Shere Khan in this version of The Jungle Book doesn't have the same disability that the one in the actual book does, because I believe in the actual book by Rudyard Kipling, Shere Khan actually has a lame leg, which they do not portray in this version of The Jungle Book. But other than that, Shere Khan does fill in some good points. Excuse me. My nose is feeling all stuffy. But he's soft-spoken but commanding in the scenes that he's in. He has good interactions with the other characters. The other characters and members of the jungle like know him and respect him or fear him, as they well should, because he's a freaking tiger. Anyone who isn't afraid of a freaking tiger is either insane or stupid, in my personal opinion. Even though if I ran into a tiger in the wild, I will let it be known my last words will probably be, here, kitty, 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 kitty. That's how much of a weakness cats are for me. Be like, oh look, murder kitty. Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. But again, like, Shere Khan is a good villain. He's just not a great villain. So, like, they tried with him. They just didn't hit as many points as they could have and should have. But at the same time, he's just below the average cusp. So I would put him at the top of the they tried pile. Just because he does command the respect of the other characters. But at the same time, he loses to having a flaming tree branch tied to his tail. That seems like a rather embarrassing way to go. And then next we have Silver from Treasure Planet. Like Atlantis, an unspoken gem of a Disney movie. And remember when I said there were two characters on this list that had genuine character arcs? Amos Slade was the first. Long John Silver is the second. Silver has a much more compelling story arc and character arc than Slade, though. If you've read Treasure Island, you already knew he was going to be the villain, even though Disney likes to make him out to be an actual twist villain. When in reality, if you've read any version of Treasure Island, you already know Long John Silver is the bad guy. But I like the way that they portrayed him as a cyborg instead of having like the peg leg and the hook hand and all that. I feel like they did that very well for the style that they went with for this movie. he has an amazing relationship with the protagonist. His relationship with Jim evolves as he does, to where he becomes kind of like a mentor figure and then eventually evolving into a kind of a pseudo father figure by the end of the movie, even though they're on opposite sides, until Silver kind of like turns back and actually rescues Hawkins at the end of the movie. So he does have a genuine character arc, and for that he does get a lot of bonus points on top of his interactions with his mutiny crew, his interactions with the heroes. He does everything so well. He's just not at the same level as the Baddest Bones. So I would put Silver at the top of our deliciously diabolical. And honestly, that's kind of where he's just going to stay. Like, there isn't another villain on this list that remains that could probably top Silver in terms of like how I view him as a villain. Next we have Bill Sikes from Oliver and Company. Again, got a believable motive. He does have he has a realistic tone to him. Oh. Thank you for the follows, Smash OR Pass. Thank you very much. Okay, so Sykes. Like I said, he does have a realistic tone to him. He's a loan shark, the same type of sleazeball that you could see in any shady part of town, and that kind of makes him a little bit more scary in my opinion. Let's see. His interactions with Fagin are kind of one-dimensional. He basically belittles Fagin and is like, either you get me my money or we're going to have a problem. Capiche? And like, I honestly find his dogs, Roscoe and DeSoto, more interesting villains than he is overall, just because the dogs interact with the main character cast a lot more than he does. And their interactions are way more entertaining. Whereas Sykes, for the most part, kind of just doesn't have that. He interacts mostly with Fagin and Jenny. I will say, though, he has the second sickest death scene of any Disney villain when he gets hit by an oncoming train. Like, Clayton is the only other villain that has a worse death scene than Bill Sikes. Like, every time I see Bill Sikes get run over by that train, it makes me cringe. Just not as much as Clayton getting hung from a vine. So, Sikes is kind of in the average slot. So I would put him below Slim, but above Edgar. Just because he is a legitimate threat and he proves himself as such, whereas Edgar is kind of just a bumbling buffoon masquerading as a villain. And even though I find Edgar to be a much more entertaining and engaging antagonist, Sykes just gets a few more points for being a legit threat and actually like driving the conflict. Should put the girl made of lava in the lowest tier. Yeah, we're about to get to that. And honestly, like, you do have a point. Like, honestly, I would put Tekka in the Fiendish Fools. And I would put her below Ratcliffe, but above Bowling Hat Guy, just because Tekka is more... She's more of an overarching threat, and she has more of a motive for being as fiendish as she is. Like, she lost her heart, and that basically drove her mad. Whether out of anger or grief, I do not know. Couldn't really gauge that by watching Moana. You're right. She does have a point to be bad because she was trying to get back what belonged to her. But at the same time, though, they didn't give her as much screen time as they should have, and that's really the main thing in my eyes that's holding Tekka back. I feel like if they weren't gonna make Tekka the main villain, like Tamatoa would have made a much more engaging villain for the movie, just because he actually takes command of the scenes that he's in, and he has a much more intrinsic relationship with the heroes, particularly Maui. And I feel like that gives Tamatoa more points. So I feel like if we were gauging Tamatoa over instead of Tekka, I would probably put Tamatoa like I would be kind of torn between putting him in awfully average or diabolical. I would probably put him like in the upper tiers of awfully average, just because he doesn't do as much as the folks in Deliciously Diabolical, but he does have a heck of a nice villain song. Shiny is not a bad song. Alright, so next we have Ursula. Remember your sister had a crush. Okay, to be fair, Clayton he's got that handsome, ruggish look to him. Like, I can see why girls that grew up watching Tarzan would have a crush on him, because he does have that bombastic, confident attitude. So I can definitely see that. But going down to Ursula, she is another example of a villain that I feel checks off just about every box. Poor Unfortunate Souls is one of... He has the face of the... You're not wrong. It's like, if we're going by ruggish good looks on this list, I would say the top three would probably be Clayton, Rourke, and Gaston. In terms of just like pure, unadulterated, like roguish good looks. Not necessarily in that order, but those would be the three that kind of jump out to my mind. But Ursula is one of the most iconic Disney villains. She has a really good villain song. She has a legitimate reason for doing what she does. You'll find out in the remake. It's not really explicitly stated in the 1990s version of the movie, but Ursula is technically Triton's sister. So that would make her Ariel's aunt. And she's basically like ticked off that she was exiled from the kingdom. Although when you're a witch, that kind of comes with the territory. But at the same time, she does have a legitimate motive for her villainy. She's very manipulative. She's got a friggin' silver tongue. When I was little, I had nightmares about Ursula because she scared me when she... Okay, yeah, that is a very terrifying idea. Like, being able to lose your voice to something like that. It was very interesting for the time period that this movie was made. Like, of all the Renaissance films, like, The Little Mermaid is the most remembered for its music. Like, when they think Disney music, more often than not, their thoughts are going to jump to two movies: The Little Mermaid and The Lion King. Or at least if you talk to anyone from my generation, that is. But she's very good at getting what she wants. She has a good relationship with her subordinates, Flotsam and Jetsam. In fact, their deaths is the thing that kind of provokes her into, like, making that jump to her humongous form at the end of the movie. So, like, seeing her interactions with not only them, but also Ariel and Triton are just kind of like a total package, because it's very well done. The relationships are very well fleshed out for the most part. Like I said, they didn't really flesh out the relationship between Ursula and Triton too much until the remake. But other than that, they did everything very well. So I would put Ursula in Diabolical, but I would put her... I would probably put her just below Jafar, just because I feel like Jafar and the others above her on this tier kind of just do everything that she does just a smidge better. Plus, they usually have better relationships with their allies as far as like being more engaging, because you don't really know too much about Flotsam and Jetsam. Whereas when you see with like Smee or Iago, like you kind of get a better idea for how they interact. Another movie that scared me was Frankenweenie. Oh, God. I haven't seen that movie in years. I'd have to rewatch that one at some point. All right. Our last major Disney villain, Yzma. Yzma. Yzma is a jewel. The Emperor's New Groove is one of the best Disney movies of all time, in my opinion. The way that they did everything with this movie was very well written, very well done. Yzma does not have a character arc in the way that, say, Long John Silver or Amos Slade do, but she is a driving force for the character arc of the hero of the movie. It's because of Yzma and Kronk that Kuzco is forced to kind of examine himself and evolve from a spoiled little emperor into a more kind, benevolent ruler. And Pancha isn't really the one that drives that very much. Like, he has a hand in it, sure. Like, teaching Kuzco about like the lives of the common people, but Yzma and his relationship with Yzma is the driving force, because Yzma practically raised Kuzco. So for him to find out that she's trying to kill him is a betrayal of the highest order, and that turns Kuzco's entire world upside down in a way that you don't see in a lot of Disney movies. Plus, her relationship and interactions with both Kuzco and Kronk are just hilarious. Yzma is one of the most fun Disney villains to watch, in my opinion. And, like, she's got a legitimate reason. She got fired. She wants to be the one in charge. And kind of like Jafar, I would put her as an unsung hero of the movie, because she wants to put a obviously like spoiled and like ineffective ruler off the throne and put herself in it. The only difference between her and Jafar is actually legitimately more regal looking and has a better understanding of how politics work compared to Yzma. Yzma is just going on a power trip. Whereas Jafar, I don't really see that all that much until he actually gets hold of the genie's lamp, and then the power, or the potential for power, corrupts him to that point. But overall, I would say Yzma is just like one of the most fun Disney villains. So I'm going to put her in Deliciously Diabolical, just under Silver, but above Rourke, because she does a lot of the stuff that Rourke does in terms of like having a good motive, being a realistic character of a villain in that role. But at the same time, though, she's just more fun doing it. In the scene where Yzma grabs the dress and shows the knife. Oh, yeah, I think that scene disgusted everyone. Like, even as a kid, I was like, oh my God, that's disgusting. And then the best part was like, where they were like, no, And then when she rolls up the dress and they see the knife, Cusco and Pacha are both like, "Oh yeah, that's okay, that's okay." It's like they were relieved that she was showing a knife instead of like trying to show them her unmentionables. They're like, seeing her unmentionables was more horrifying than the idea of seeing a knife. Like, that's one of the things that makes Yzma one of the top Disney villains, in my opinion. But overall, that's pretty much like how I would rank all of these characters. This is my first tier list, and like I said, in August we are going to be doing another one where me and a friend of mine are going to kind of go over old retro games from our childhood. So, I mean, you guys can agree or disagree with my rankings, but this is how I feel about these Disneyville. From the obviously pitiful, or the ones that they've tried to make something of, but they just failed horribly at, to the ones that are the top of the pile that are basically like the gold standard, in my opinion, for what a Disney villain is and how they should be. So, that being said, that'll probably be it for today. I am going to be starting our new streaming project on Saturday. We are going to be going and starting Dark Cloud for the PlayStation 2, which is going to be a very, very fun project to go into. So for that, let's go ahead and see who we can raid tonight. Gotta see who is on first. Let's see. And of course, it's going to be a little bit slow. We got some Stardew Valley, Left 4 Dead, Slime Rancher, Demonologist. Ew, no. Me no like it, the horror. Let's see. Family Feud, Dead by Daylight, Crab Champions. What's that? That's a little bit interesting. Never heard of that game before. That actually might be kind of interesting, but I think we are going to probably go say hi to my friend Mara and go watch some Stardew Valley. Because I feel like I haven't seen Stardew in a little bit, and I need to actually get back into playing that at some point. But thank you all very much for coming in tonight. I enjoyed doing this tier list. And like I said, you guys are welcome to agree with me or disagree. Curious fact that transformation of Cusco into an alpaca is inspired by the Jarjacha Peruvian. I actually do know that. I'm not as versed in South American folklore and mythology as other branches of mythology, but I do know of a few things. And I was actually interested in like the idea of transforming into a llama or an alpaca. So I actually did research when I was younger the legend of the Jarjacha. And some people actually already know this, but I did my main research study as a librarian is in folklore and mythology, surprisingly enough. But let's go ahead and get this raid set up. I will hopefully see you all on Saturday when we start Dark Cloud. But for now, I need to get off here, go raid somebody, say hi to my friends, and then try to figure out why this cat keeps trying to rub up on my leg. Maybe they ran out of food and I need to feed them. But I'll go ahead and get the raid set up, and I will see you all on Saturday. But until then, this is Alden Foodrise signing off for the evening. Farewell.